Today, I'm excited to welcome Stuart Lowndes, CEO of XMEK, to the podcast. With over 3 decades of global leadership experience from his early days as a technical apprentice at Lucas Aerospace to executive roles across IPS, Rubbercraft, Green Tweed, and now leading XMEK, Stu brings a wealth of insight into what it takes to drive real, lasting change. He's a seasoned operator, a strategic thinker, and a lifelong learner with credentials from Pepperdine, Wolverhampton, and Harvard. Stu, thanks for joining us to share your journey and what continuous improvement and leading change really looks like in action.
Thanks, Keith. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. So, Stu, as we get started, let's talk just a little bit about your background and what made you first passionate about continuous improvement and how you got started in leading a continuous improvement journey with your companies, with your endeavors.
Yeah, so I'm an engineer, so I think I trace it all back to the fact that I'm an engineer. And I believe as a good engineer, you've got to be curious about how things work, right? Engines, vacuum cleaners, whatever it is. But also flow, right? How things flow, how things move, the efficiencies. I like sort of body mechanics, having been an athlete over the years. I was always interested in how the body moves and how the body can move efficiently. So really, I think my brain was already programmed to sort of pick up on efficiencies and how do you improve those efficiencies and how do things flow. So that's where it is for me, is the visualization of things flow, what stops them, what flows for too long, just like a stream running, right? Looking for those rocks or those wide open, short, shallow areas. So that's sort of really where I got into it. Green Tweed was the first company that I really got involved in continuous improvement. And I can go into that a little bit more later, but that's how I got passionate about it. Is I'm an engineer and I like things to have a flow and an efficiency to them.
The stream's a great analogy, Stu. People don't think about it from that perspective, but like a river, what we're trying to do is take anything that breaks up that smooth, steady flow and take it out of the way so it continues to flow. And most don't think of it that way. That's a great analogy. So, what kind of changes have you seen in the industry or specifically in XMEK over the last few years, or industry in general over the last 25 years?
Yeah, it's an interesting, but thank you for the compliment. But I think this is actually my 35th working year, because in the UK we leave school early. So I actually left before my 16th birthday, and I was in a engineering apprenticeship at Lucas Aerospace by my 16th birthday or just after. So yeah, I may be young in age, but I've certainly got the scars and the years of working. So yeah, to me, it's a good question, because I think back in the day, when I first got involved in CI, it was all about cellular manufacture, right? That was what you heard. It's like just bringing things together so that the flow or the movement between them is much more efficient, and you cut down on that walk time. So it's a manufacturing. It was cells. It was how often are we touching the product. And really what I've seen the evolution of that over the last certainly 10 years in my own career is it's moved into office work. It's moved into the processes to delight customers. It's moved into work instructions. It's moved into how we quote a product. It's all efficiencies. It's all wastes, right? We look for wastes. There's a lot of wastes in work instructions and processes that add no value to what the customer needs and how to get it to them. And then more recently, the evolution of AI, I think, stepping in now with the technology that's at our fingertips to truly go from a fax machine for an RFQ to a quote to now, automated systems with AI spiders running inside your ERP systems, and automatic quotes. So I think in my mind, that's how CI's changed, but I still look back and say, okay, our distribution footprint, it's basic efficiencies. It's basic, we go into continuous improvement. We're not up into Six Sigmas and areas like that, much more just on the Kaizen and and the lean fronts, but that will continue. But yeah, it's definitely moved more into the office, more into the paperwork, more into the processes on how we delight the customer. And in this market, being first means you win. Being last obviously means you
Right.
lose.
The words that you use there, the thoughts that you brought across to are pretty profound. Oftentimes, we'll go into a company and they'll be talking about part shortages and, the suppliers are underperforming. And if we could just fix our suppliers, things would be much better. And when you start to dig into it, and this isn't always the case, but when you really start to dig into it, their business process around signaling to their suppliers is broken and or in their internal shop is broken, and that's causing more issue than they realize. And moving upstream and fixing the business process as you talk drives as much improvement as going out and building the cells sometimes. And it's knowing really where to look and understanding what's driving those inefficiencies as you talk about. That's critical. So well said. You now work as CEO at XMEK. That's where I had the privilege to start to get to know you, and have had the privilege of working with you over the past few years. Tell us a little bit about that company. Put a plug in there for what XMEK does, and where you're trying to take the organization as a whole.
Sure. Yeah. XMEK is a corporate carve out of what was Eric's Seals and Plastics. We rebranded the business based on the fact that we don't just sell or distribute or manufacture seals and plastics. We offer up a lot of different products. So the word XMEK came from the combination of mechanical products. Everything we provide is a mechanical product of some form, whether it be a seal or a bearing or a fastener. But it also goes into mechanical systems. High consequence mechanical systems is what we provide into. So we're not providing into the faucet in your sink, even though that has a very similar seal, as a tool that's going under the ground to go search out the next LG area, or oil, area. So that's where we deal more in the semicon side. So that's where XMEK came from. X is just I had it before Elon, but it's just a fun play on marketing, logos, marketing, exceptional excellence. So Eric Seals and Plastics was, when I joined, was 4 regions, and I use my language carefully. I believe language is a big leadership trait that we have to be careful with. So there were 4 regions that were made up of over 7 acquisitions over the last 30 years. And each region had its own infrastructure, its own leader, if you will, general manager, its own strategy, its own values, its own way that it went to market, everything. So, what we've done over the last 3 years is really flattened all of that. I'll talk about why in a minute, into 8 locations. So not regions, but locations, with 1 region, which is the globe. Out of those 8 locations, we have 6 regional distribution. Yes, regional, because they look after a certain area. We have 1 manufacturing center, a die cut manufacturing center that produced over 93 million parts in 2024. So you talk about efficiencies, that's definitely a place that we'll be converging on next. 2 converting sites that convert flat materials into gasket type products. And then we have 1 material and design laboratory where we're fully approved to design products into all of the markets that we work with, and also design and compound our own materials. So we've flattened all of the structures. We've put in functional leadership, and really what that's done from a continuous improvement standpoint is it's flattened it to reduce waste in communication and increase speed. So we talked about what's changed again, right? The flow of information up through an organization, a silo, if you will, to come out of the top to get to another silo and go all the way down to the bottom just wasn't working. Whereas now we're completely flat horizontally. So the information flow now just moves horizontally, not up and across and down. Lots of other reasons for it as well, but that's what we've done. So the rebrand, as I said, is mechanical components that we provide. We're a distributor, we're a logistics provider, and we're also an engineering company. Seals, rubber and plastic custom products, gaskets, bearings, compression fittings, filters. And we also offer VMI shelf space for our customers' needs, which also then gets a lot of other products added. So thank you for the opportunity to pitch with a little bit of CI in there, but that's XMEK. We'd love to help out as many of your viewers as we can.
Yeah, I've had the privilege of watching some of that transformation that you're speaking of, Stu, and it hasn't come without its challenges. And quite honestly, as we shift maybe to some of those challenges, we're trying to focus a little bit here on change and change management. Talk a little bit about some of the challenges you faced as you introduced the change of flat organizations, introducing CI and flow, and how did you bring the organization along, and what are some of the bigger challenges you faced in dealing with that?
Man, many. Um, I describe my 4-year career here at XMEK so far. The first year was positioning the business to sell. The second year was unplugging from the European corporate parent, and the last 2 years has been fixing the levels of non-communication in between. So in a nutshell, that's what we've done. It just at a high level, in order to bring a group of people together, we're getting it a little bit into leadership, but you've got to have core values that run through the entire organization. People have got to be able to look and say, that's who we are, that's who we want to be, that's who our customers want us to be. And this is what that looks like and feels like. So one of the first things we did was put core values in place. Alongside that was a vision. So that's great. We know how we want to act. We know what we want to see as our core values, but what are we going to do with it? Well, we're going to head there. Okay, how are we going to get there, and why are we even heading that direction? So there's the mission. So putting all of that in place and really just getting everybody's heads to tilt towards that, from myself all the way down to somebody putting a label on a box, all the way through the organization. The core values, the mission, and the vision are very clear now. They're visual. We acknowledge core values in employees during our town halls. So we make sure to push that. That goes a long way in being able to then change the structure. Because while people are focused on who we are, why we are, and where we're going, then as long as the structural changes that you're making make sense for that, then everybody nods their heads and goes along with it. So it's took a while, but we're sort of at that position now. Continuous improvement is just one of those things that any leader of a business should be looking at, because efficiencies are your internal powerhouse to add EBITDA or free up time, soft costs, to allow you to go after new markets without adding too many people and basically scale. So CI has definitely been a good platform for us to launch into the new XMEK. And it's certainly, knowledgeable is one of our core values. Yes, we can is another one. And unbiased solutions is a third. And all those go hand in hand with CI, keeping an open mind, but learning to make sure that we can say, yes, we can to our customers.
Perfect. The other story that I would share, Stu, when you and I first met in person, and I won't say the site so that they don't know who I'm talking about. You pulled your leadership team together in that site and brought in an outside guy that, we've talked on the phone a few times. And I remember you kind of just sitting back and saying, hey guys, I want you to kick the tires on this guy and see what see what he knows, take him around the plant. But what that really did was gave ownership to your team, that they were part of the decision. You easily could have said, hey, I know a little bit about this guy because some of our sister facilities are using him. They come endorsed by our PE firm, and so we're going to go do it. But you didn't take that approach. You allowed them to run the paces with me, and I think that was good for both parties. From a, hey, I reinforced a lot of the stuff you were saying, Stu, and it gave them ownership into the decision making and how we might go forward. So I think that involvement, something that is that you demonstrated, whether you were doing it, I think, oh, I know you were doing it consciously, but was a good move, I believe.
Yeah, it's, well, one of the leadership principles I live by is it's not about me. It's not about me declaring a direction and, you know, smacking the back of the racehorse to get it to go. Um, Leadership is all about a self-sustaining team that understands, again, who we are, the core values, where are we going and why, and then how to rally everybody together and go in that direction. So it's a much easier path. Sometimes it's you see leaders, and I've seen great coaches through my life. And a great coach to me is somebody that taught me something that I really admired and wanted to implement. And a great coach was also somebody who showed me something that I didn't want to implement and didn't admire, right? You have to have both sides of the coaching to truly figure out where you want to go. But one thing for sure is it's not about me. A leader is somebody who's simply there to bring a team of people together with overlapping skills to your own that close all of the gaps up in an environment that just makes them feel as though they've got the accountability, the empowerment to just go get things done. And continuous improvement just makes sense, right? So that was an easy one, just to say, hey, go talk with Keith, go see what you find out. And at the time, those guys had already done their own, if you recall. They'd already, none of them are trained, but they'd already walked the floor and come up with a bullet point list of things that they would change. So they were already thinking that way. So rather than walk in and be like, yeah, ignore yours, listen to this guy, and trusting you, having got to know you, trusting you as well, that's what you would do is, yeah, come on in, let's talk about it all. Let's look at your bullet points. Let's put them together and figure out what the best ones are. So, and as you and I know, that was a very successful outcome to that particular project.
Absolutely. So when you think about your CI initiatives and as you're driving improvements, there's lots of different ways you can measure the success and or failure of that activity. Is there any in particular that you start to look at to say, man, this initiative is really taking hold and starting to go the direction I want it to? Is there any you focus in on?
Um, I mean, you have to measure it, right? If you're not measuring it, you're not moving it. I know there's a million ways of saying that, but to me, if I'm not seeing where I was and where I'm going, the first few conversations you and I had, it's like, okay, well, what's my proposal going from and to? You have to understand that. So to me, there's three areas that we look at. Number one, I have to make it number one, just in case anybody from our parent company listens to this podcast, right, is the financial. It has to pay. So we do track at the EBITDA level on the P&L. We do track that what we're implementing and what we said the hard costs would be are flowing down to the P&L. So we actually have a CI. I've called it a dashboard in Power BI, which is the tool that we use. But it's basically a dashboard that shows us that any initiatives that we've put in place that we said we would save 30 grand a month, we're measuring that it saved 30 grand a month. And if it's not, we go back and look at it and say, is it a implementation issue? Is it a people issue? Is it a process issue? Or is it just a trust and verify issue? And we haven't revisited enough just to keep the flywheel moving. So that's on the financial side. There's soft costs from that side as well. So a lot of initiatives that we put in, we're growing. We want to grow. We want to grow. Fast isn't the right word. We want to grow in a controlled manner, not an uncontrolled manner, at a rate much higher than market, right? So that's how we look at it, a rate higher than market in a controlled manner. Well, to do that, you need people, you need efficiencies, you need processes. So a lot of the CI work that we do involves a reduction in somebody's hours that they need to put to a particular task. I'll use a quote tool. If you previously are taking 2 hours to do a quote and we put a quote tool in that'll take 7 minutes. Okay, well, what are you doing with that extra time? Where are we going to focus that? So we also measure those soft costs. It's harder to measure because sometimes people's workload just moves like osmosis. But if you measure it and you're open about it, then you can use that to scale. We also go with the feel of the organization. Feel's a hard metric to put on, right? What's the units of feel? Don't know. There isn't one. But we ask if people's jobs are easier or harder than the post implementation than pre implementation. And there's been times when people will say, "Yeah, my job's harder now." All right, something went wrong. What went wrong? But if people feel that their job is now easier and they can do it better and they can be more knowledgeable at what they do and spend some more time doing something else, that's what we're after. And then the last one is just growth on the top line. We measure revenue per head. So we look at, okay, are we going to catch $10 million worth of growth? And we grow our revenue per head 20%. So it's not about how many people we added, it's how much that revenue per head increases. They're really the three measurements that I look at.
Great. Thank you for that. You talk about the feel. Our founder and CEO, Ed Hoffman, recently put a blog together, or a video, I can't remember which, but we're often asked as we tour facilities, how do you know if it's a lean organization or not? And he talks about exactly what you just said there, Stu. There's a feel in the air. You can tell the people know what they're doing. They know why they're doing it. They understand. There's a feel. Yes, there are metrics, and yes, there's those things, but the true functioning continuous improvement organizations, there's a feel. Well, that's cool that you bring that one in as well, because most would just have your first two, the bottom line and top line. So I like it. I like it.
Well, leadership is feel, right? So that there's definitely a key in XMEK, and that's that we spend a lot of time focused on true leadership and engagement and training and bringing up supervisors to managers and managers to directors and directors to replace me someday. We're all about making sure that we've got leaders working through the organization.
So the next, you talk about leadership through the organization. As you look back over your career and think about, the various leaders you've had, the lessons you've learned, different approaches in driving transformations or leading change or building high performance teams. What are some of the key lessons that you can glean out of those things? You talked about good coaches and bad coaches, but what can you share with others?
Man, that's a podcast on its own right there, right? I mean, there's people
Yes, it is.
talking for the last 3 years on things like that. Me personally, I would say just my journey, not in order, obviously. I'll just throw them out as I get them, but I guess that's one key leadership trait is transparency and honesty. If you have to think of something and make something up to answer a question like that, then you've really got to be considering if you're a true leader. So, understanding who you are, what your skills are, where your gaps are, and I said it earlier, and then you build a team that not only closes my gaps, the gaps in the organization, but overlaps the skills so that everybody's working as a cohesive team, healthy conflict, the whole 5 dysfunctions of a team pyramid. I love working up through trust to healthy conflict and eventually obviously getting to results. That's big. So, having the humility and the boldness to actually stepping in to a group of leaders and saying, all right, throw it on the table. Let's have it out. You said this, you said that, she said this. You have enough of those conversations and your leadership team starts to hum because they all know that, there's full transparency. So that's one I would say. And I think I said this earlier as well. A CEO of an organization, we're working through corporate leadership development right now, which is a really good friend of mine who's been doing this for 30 plus years, who's been working with us now for a year at the exec level, and now we're rolling it to the management and the supervisor level. He talks about the meaning of words, and he says leader is actually two words, which means pathfinder. So I agree with that. I believe the leader of an organization is a pathfinder. It's somebody who has their eye on where's the world going, right? What's happening out strategically, what's changing, what are our competitors doing? But also at the same time, humility is, again, this is Pete Hanahosa, his name is, he's brilliant. Humility is rich soil, is what it translates to. So providing the rich soil through humility, servant leadership, if you will, being able to put that in front of a team and just say, what do you need from me? And I'm going to go get it done. So build the environment, put the incentives in, and then servant leadership, but keep an eye on the pathway. I said it earlier, culture is core values, it's mission, it's vision. The old commentary, culture eats strategy for breakfast is true. I've been in many companies where we've had a nice folder. Here's the 2013 strategy. That looks great. Where do we keep it? Oh, it stays on the shelf up there until next year. They weren't high performing companies for that reason. So here at XMEK, we not only have, as I mentioned, the core values, the mission, the vision, but we also have EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, as our strategic operating system. That's what we use for our strategic planning. So another point there is get a structured, usable, consistent process for your strategic sessions, and make sure that everything rolls down from there. So all of our rocks, or our KPIs, rocks is an EOS term, all roll down from the main strategic initiatives of the business that we need to do this year. And as you know, you've called me and said, hey, what's going on with this? And I've said, hey, we've pushed that off 2 quarters because we've got something more important in front of it. You have to be able to say no to things. That's point number 5, I guess, or whatever we're on here. You've got to be able to say no to things because there's something that's a higher priority. So being able to have the managerial courage and lead a team to say it's okay to change. If the market changes, tariffs is a beautiful example, right? We could have a whole podcast on that. If the environment changes, something we're doing today may not be as important as something that now becomes important. So being able to work with that. The last thing I'd add, talked a lot on this, but I love leadership. Last thing I'd add is, again, I just bring it back to the beginning. It's not about you. It's not about me. One of my favorite books is called The Breakthrough Company. It talks about crowning the company, not crowning the owner or the leader or the entrepreneur. And that's exactly what it is. Sinek's, I think is it called The Infinite Company or The Infinite Business? He talks about you build a business not till I retire. You build a business for hundreds of years, right? And if you don't think about it that way, if you think about it as yourself, you've got a finite time when the business is going to stop in your head. So you've got to look at it as an infinite business. So breakthrough company and last, good to great. Anybody new to leadership and how to build a business, just go buy that book, pick it up, start at the beginning, know you're going to be about 3 years through a process, and just work your way through it. So I've talked a little too much there, Keith. Sorry.
Those are great insights. I appreciate those. And I even took some notes down, Stu. I've talked to you many times, and there was a couple nuggets in there that I've not heard that we've talked. I'm like, I got to capture those because they are solid. So I appreciate that. You've probably answered this next one already, but it's one of my favorite questions, so I'm going to ask it. If you were to roll back in time to when you were a young 16-year-old starting business, knowing what you know today, is there a single piece of advice you'd give yourself that do this and everything will be great, or a single piece of advice that it's just like that gold nugget?
Hmm. A single piece. You can't do it all. You need help. You're not invincible. Um, find more humility. Ask for help. Be open to your way not being the best way. There's, there's, there's a. I think most parents would tell that to their kids today, right? But we didn't listen. But I think that's what that sort of wraps it all up, right? As a young leader, I thought it was all about coming up with the direction and then telling everybody what to do. So the humility of, no, your way isn't always the best way. Um, you run into things thinking you're invincible. You're not invincible. You'll burn yourself out. You'll get battle scars, some of which you need to learn, but and you can't do it all. Hire people that are way better than you in the gaps and the skills that you need. Way better than you. Don't be afraid of them. Power is not or knowledge is not power. Sorry, knowledge
Exactly.
sharing is
I
power.
oftentimes share with young people that you want to hold your knowledge to yourself because you think that makes you a more secure employee. So that they can't replace you. And it's like, no, the more you share and the more you're able to show to the organization you have some knowledge about stuff, the more invaluable you become. So that's well said, Stu. I appreciate that. So kind of wrapping up. You in the introduction, you talked a little bit about some of the change that you see coming with CI, specifically around artificial intelligence and how that blends a little bit. But if you were to look out into the future, what do you see besides AI, or maybe it is just AI, that's going to be really transformative in the whole continuous improvement arena?
I'm certainly not qualified to answer that question, but I'll throw you my viewpoint. Um, definitely AI, right? That's definitely coming in with a speed and a sort of almost common sense uh, add on to what we would be able to do today. I also think that as continuous improvement has been gaining legs, more and more of the graduates from universities are coming out with that way of thinking. So it's almost going to be, it'll almost become a core value without being a core value, if I can say it that way. Because people would just automatically be looking to think, how do I make this more efficient? How do I work less? Maybe that's the way they look at it. I don't know, but I would say that. But I would also say there's still so much low hanging fruit. I mean, we're in the acquisition field as well, and I like to walk through acquisitions and see not that they've done everything and they've got a master black belt and metric wall that with everything on it. I like to see companies they understand that their inefficiencies sort of get in the way, but they don't necessarily have the knowledge or the resources to get it done. So there's still so much low hanging fruit, just in looking at the basic principles of CI. So I think the future is still very, very basic principles of CI across an entire business. That's just going to make us much, much, much more efficient. I do think there's probably going to come a time when it's overburdensome, where AI and all of this is trying to tell us exactly what to do, and it's not quite what we should be doing. But for now, I think there's a long way. There's a lot of low hanging fruit, and I think AI is giving us that. Again, go back to good to great, the technology accelerator at the end. We've just got another spike on the technology accelerator that, as long as you're on it, you'll be able to stand apart from your competitors.
Yeah, that's a great point, Stu. I attended a conference. It's probably been 6 months ago where they were talking about AI and helping businesses and, almost industry 4.0 or 5.0, whichever you want to call it. And the example they gave that kind of was a light for me was it wasn't too long ago where we were collecting SPC with writing it on charts and tracking the charts. And now a lot of the CNC equipment can go in and make that measurement and do the SPC on its own. which takes out variability and drives accuracy. And when they tie in artificial intelligence now, they're able to take that SPC, send it to the AI, come back and adjust the machine with the operator never having to think about it. And, that to me is a wise application of AI. Um, that takes variability, which is also a form of waste, as we all know, takes that variability out of it so we can really drive improvements and put our talents into things that are not focusing on those manageable tasks. So Stu, I've run out of questions. I really appreciate, again, spending the last 35, 40 minutes with you and reconnecting. As always, you're a gentleman and a great person to talk to. You're inspiring, and I'm happy for you and your team because it seems like things are going very well for you. So I appreciate your time and look forward to continuing to work together with you in the future.
You too. Thanks, Keith.